Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Mollie Carmichael with Zonda, and we're going to talk about as we get near the end of the year with some new tactics, old tactics, where we're at in the world, and just things you should be looking at as you try to survive and thrive in this new world. So a little bit about us, as you guys know, we have experts throughout the country. We've got advisors throughout the country, teams out there talking to different builders, visiting different communities to make sure you've got the most up-to-date information. Zonda Advisory for sure is here. There's a variety of things we do. Anything custom related to a real estate decision or a real estate investment, that's really what we do. We also have Building Product Pro, Enterprise, and Mortgage Pro. If any of those actually are interesting to you, please reach out to us. Whether you're a building product manufacturer, a builder, developer, investor, or even on the mortgage side, we've got a product that will help you, frankly, spend your time out there in the business analyzing and less time collecting information. We also have Livable coming out. For those of you who don't know about it, it's North America's largest online new home listing destination. It's free to list, free leads, and it's exclusively new home construction too. So please join us there. We'd love to have you as part of that. And then Zonda Virtual, all things virtual as you are trying to make things come alive. Alpha Vision and their team, it's a tremendous new asset that we have. So please join us there too. And any information you want or need on this, please reach out to Karen Bonder. Last but not least, of course, the consumer and product insights. If you're trying to figure out what consumers want today in this changing market, please reach out to us. I spend probably so much of my time in this category, and people are always asking what's changing, what's going to change longer, and we're trending this stuff so we can really sort of look at that stuff. So let's dive into the presentation right now. Speaking of which, understanding who your consumer is and what's going on in the market, I would definitely be planning for change. There's definitely disruption out there, and it's undeniable change. We are recovering from one of the world's biggest catastrophic epidemics for sure, at least since the early 1900s. We have worldwide economies that have taken huge hits, and they're trying to survive in this new economy with a whole lot of debt that they took on to survive through that. We have gas prices that are shifting, and what really impacts the most, or the households that get impacted the most, are the most affordable households that we're driving farther to try to find a more affordable house. So how do we deal with that? And then of course we have inflation, and that's putting more pressure on budgets. And last but not least, it's crazy to think about this, but I'm going to show you the numbers. Today's monthly payment has increased more than 50 to 60% in the last year. 60% was just quoted by Bloomberg. But when you look at rates, and for all of you home builders and developers out there, and even I think on the building product manufacturing side, you must have felt it. When you look at right about March 17th, exactly, that's when rates really started to shift. So that period after that, nobody really saw the results of that until about April. So I can't tell you how many builders and consumers who have said, May and June just halted altogether. And then that first week after July, about the July 8th weekend, it kicked into gear, rates came down a little bit, and of course they're coming back up. But when you look at the impact, I've got really the numbers here. As you look to sort of how things are shifting, you should be able to see exactly that. So September of last year in 2021, the average monthly payment for the same home price was about $1,650 in monthly payment. That same home price today, if you're looking at a jumbo loan, is $2,400 a month, or an increase of 45%. The home price to get to that same payment today loses about $227,000. It's substantial. And if we took on an FHA loan, that would go up to 6.82% today, and you would lose about $290,000 in price. So again, that understanding of what consumers want, really solving for what they're looking for, both in a digital way, both in a product way, all of those things. We're going to talk a lot about that today. What do you do? Because those are huge numbers, and I can't think of a time where we have seen monthly payment shift that much that quickly in a 12-month period. So shifting tides, obviously, consumer confidence to buy a home has shifted dramatically. Price transparency, it's more important than ever. So really making sure that you're giving them all the vehicles to make this as affordable as possible. Because once again, it's not only impacting the home that they're purchasing, but oftentimes the home that they're selling. The other thing is only 16% of today's new home shoppers looking for a home aren't satisfied with their home, so they don't have to move. Particularly when we look at boomers, and we're going to talk a lot about the different buyer profiles out there, but 84% of your shoppers need a compelling reason to move. And so much of that happens in the emotion and the things that you can provide them in the digital marketing tools, but also the product that you're selling to them. This is one of my favorite sayings when times get tough, and it really isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's really figuring out how to dance in the rain. So we're going to talk about that, and really a lot about just innovation and how we need to lead in this new market that we're living in today, because again, it's undeniable change. And we've got to be able to come out with not only solutions that solve for them today, but how it's going to solve for tomorrow. So we're going to talk about content first. Who are you solving for? What are you solving for? How will you tell your story? And we'll talk about digital platforms and the things that are working best then in our world today. And then what tools are going to help you thrive, and how does that change by different buyer groups? So let's dive in first with just kind of who you're solving for. I'll just high level demographics. We've talked a lot about this over the years, but today Gen Y and baby boomers, they're the biggest group out there finally. And you will see it's a perfect demographic group to be there during a storm, if you will. The Gen Y buyer is the most mobile, and they'll buy a home in the next 3 to 6 months because they have to move. Their families are bursting at the seams and they're trying to find where to go. And the boomer buyer has the highest wealth. So they want to move. They're looking at the market correcting right now. And so they want to shift that equity. And I think that's going to continue to have tailwinds. And that should be a very strong market, even as the market continues to shift. As we look to Gen Y and the boomer buyer, you can see actually where the most dominant segments are out there. And again, mostly Gen Y is as the dominant consumer throughout the country and throughout those regions. And again, if we look at that buyer group, they're 27 now, I think to 42 are the numbers. And so it's perfect. 27 is the average age to actually have children. And for a man, it's 30 years to get married. For a woman, it's 28 years to get married. And so again, as we're forming and family shifting too, as we're forming new families or new households, that's shifting as well. Gen Y, it's a smart generation, but with that comes a higher bar to perform to. So they represent the most educated generation, led by women, of course, at 27% versus 21% with postgraduate. Plan for diversity for sure. As they get younger, you can see the demographics. When we get to Gen Y and Gen Z, it's 44 or half the population that actually is a non-white individual. So again, just understanding all of the cultural characteristics in your marketing efforts, all of that. There's so much I could spend on each culture an hour to 2 hours just on that. The other part of it too is just the whole definition of family and marriage just continues to redefine itself. As we do some of our demand modeling and we do some of the consumer research, we're seeing about 1 in 3 of those single households is really living like a family. And so again, it's getting harder and harder and less transparent to really sort of uncover some of that stuff. Boomers are looking to cash out again with over half the wealth in the US. That's staggering. I mean, they certainly can afford it. The challenge with boomers is they like their toys and they like their stuff, particularly for that youngest decade of the boomers. The older decade of those boomers are definitely more frugal and more financially sensitive. The next generation of retirees, Gen X, not quite so lucky. So they have less than 30% of the US wealth. And in addition to that, Gen X also shares significantly more debt than any other generation, but they are seeing a little bit of growth. And then when we get to the Gen X household, it's also very different. So they're most likely to have a 65+ year old parent with them. and a child under 18 at home. So how do we solve for that? How do we tell that story? And certainly there are a lot of great tools out there for that. Last but not least, as we look at demographics, women in home, these are updated stats. Single women are the second largest consumer to follow a family, which that's consistent. 1 in 6 of home buyers today, 16%, 1 in 6 is a single woman. 1 in 5 of buyers over 55 is a single woman. 1 in 5 of your first-time buyers is a single woman, and 1 in 6 is a repeat buyer as well. Last but not least, which is significant, women influence 70 to 80% of all buying decisions, or 20 trillion worldwide. And of course, one of my favorite stats, 92% of all home purchases are led or influenced by a woman. So now we're going to talk about, before we get into that digital strategy, and you're going to see some parts and pieces of this on how it translates to your digital strategy. But how do you tell your story? So from, keywords and how you're looking at SEO, how you look at your website, all the way down to your product design, what are the things that are most at the kind of top of the list that consumers are really focused on today? And we covered some of this. I was recently at the BDX Insight conference, where I'm going to hit some of the things I actually covered in that, but it's so relevant and it's so important to tell that story. So whether you're looking at financial, health, family, entertainment at home, technology, all of that stuff, it's huge to be able to tell that story easily. We're definitely seeing the home as more of a bubble and staying as a bubble. So cocooning at home continues, I think, for so many, whether it's working more at home, whether it's entertaining more at home, whether it's just figuring out ways to really sort of make the best of the space they have, but also the time that they have. And I think there's a new value on sort of family, whatever family means to you. We're also shifting at such a radical pace from a technology standpoint, 80 billion connected devices by 2025. So Wi-Fi, and even still holding on to those Cat 5 connections. I can't tell you how many people just feel safer with, even though the Wi-Fi is stellar, they still want a hard connect. It just makes them feel safer. Even on this webinar, I'm always like, oh, if it goes down, but I never feel worried if it's a hard connect and if it goes down in both places, for the record. But it is sort of a thing I think consumers today are so much more conscious of and appreciate. But today's consumers, we talked about it, this younger generation, as we continue to just have so much information at our fingertips, we're becoming so much smarter. And I don't think it's just related to younger. I think it's just the access to information we have today is amazing. And we want immediate access, and we want ultra connectivity, and we want transparency. So all things, whether it's cars, business, office, you name it, I think you really have to think through, what are you solving for in those areas? And are you telling the right message? One of the biggest things when I sort of prepared for this that really dawned on me, and I went through, I can't tell you how many websites I went through. I can't tell you how much research I've done and one-to-one interviews I've done recently. But the thing I constantly hear is the builder story and not the consumer story, and kind of what you're solving for. Tell their story, I think, in some of your digital strategies. And I'm going to show you some examples of specifically that. But even connectivity for the elderly is getting so much bigger, and it's changing our worlds. And it's changing, I think, even the opportunity to age at home. So these numbers are staggering. So 85% want to age at home today for all those over the age of 65. I think that continues to be greater. And when you look at the cost to go into a care facility and so many other things, there's so much pointing to that. But 1 in 5 households today provides care to an elderly or disabled person. By 2020, it will be 1 in 2. So think about that as you're thinking about housing solutions, and again, telling that story. And frankly, when we ask consumers today, the next home that they are going to purchase, do they want to accommodate an elderly person or somebody over the age of 21, the numbers are close to 50%. And so they want to make sure that they have that. But almost half of today's seniors want to modify their current home in preparation for some of those changes coming forward. And when you look at the overall life expectancy for the United States, I mean, it's continuing to grow. We've actually gained about 2 years of life for every decade. So that's going to continue. That number should continue to go up. We did see a slight dip during COVID, unfortunately, but that number should kind of return and continue to go up. But even things like telling the story of how much easier that is to do with all of the technology that's out there, I think there's a story to be told in that. And some real opportunities in that. I have a great friend of mine. I don't want to use his name for confidentiality and privacy purposes, but struggling with parents at home and just recently went through some big changes. And just for one of his parents, it's $22,000 a month to have somebody come in and do at-home care. So again, it's trying to figure out what are those digital solutions in combination with that at-home care, and then even going to a home with memory care, that can be pretty significant too. So getting towards the healthy living, how do we create all of that for your home? And so telling the story once again about them, how those health features that are in your home, all the things that you're doing, how am I making your life better and protecting the people you care the most about? So again, we've talked about air purification, we've talked about safety ratings, and even just down to things like sleep and air conditioning and all of those things. If you have any relatives with any kind of memory care issues, so much of that comes from even just simply things like spores coming from mold. There's so many categories there that in a new home you can sell against. But I think it's telling that story again for them and their loved ones, and how what you're doing connects with protecting the people they care about. Certainly, we're seeing huge changes in working at home. The numbers I'm seeing across the country are actually staggering for the number that aren't actually going into the office full time. So the majority you'll see actually still want to have an office at home, but many are looking for 2 offices. It's 1 in 3 that want an office at home. And then we're actually seeing workstations in addition to that requested as well. We're also seeing the change in staycations. We've talked about that so much, but I think water as a whole is just becoming the new luxury in any location. And I think that adding to life and all the things that come with that in your digital strategies. Certainly Crystal Lagoon's they have amazing digital videos, and telling that life story is incredible. And then just the simple things, wanting to connect to the outdoors because we are staying home, and being able to see green and bringing that light inside and going outside and having that outdoor entertainment. Serving those 65-year-olds that might be staying home with you, or the 21-plus-year-old child that just can't afford to live in certain locations, huge. We're seeing the idea of home changing radically, whether it's having that extra casita for an office, or frankly, just for affordability. And, if you check out what Boxable is doing with their home designs, I mean, the design's fantastic for 400 square feet. In some cases, when you look down at the floor plan, it's better designed than some of the 12 to 2,000 square foot homes that are out there. And so there's some really neat things, I think, to take away there. For the very first time this year, I'm hearing consumers say, I really wanted to have solar. I'm so disappointed I didn't get solar. I want solar, because they understand the value back to their pocket. $100 a month in this world that we're living in today, that's so extreme for cost. It's, $20,000 in home price today. It's a pretty big deal. The home battery, if we think about what's happened in the last 2 years, you think about what happened with Texas with their ice storm. It's about 1 in 2 that actually will pay $7,500 for the Tesla home battery. And there are some other sources out there for sure, but that's certainly becoming a much bigger thing today too. And again, these are all compelling reasons in your storytelling as to how you can make a difference. And even things like the average person that's going to have an electric car, it's over 80% want the opportunity to have that electric car station in their garage, and they'll pay for it. We asked them if they'd pay $800. And getting back to the gym, those spaces that we've designated for gym space, I am seeing a lot more people getting rid of that and talking more towards getting outside the house for not only exercise, but getting back to the gym. But still, those small spaces that can work, because they all bought equipment in the last 2 to 3 years to make that work, and they still want the space. Even down to the whole idea of transportation, how it works with your garage, or frankly, the lack of commuting needed or the change in commuting needed. So from e-bikes to e-scooters to now having really the golf court is the primary vehicle. And even just in flight as a whole, we're seeing so many people taking the small jet flights that cost almost the same as a commercial flight, and just the whole impact of Tesla and everything that's going on there. As we look to brands within the kitchen, for those of you who are offering other brands, I can't tell you how many consumers have no idea what it does for their phones. So we just did this big group of research, and these people are loyal to the brands. If you're an Apple fan, you're an Apple fan. If you're a Samsung fan, having Samsung appliances and having that pop up on your phone, for the very first time, Samsung and LG rival GE and Whirlpool. And in some cases, for the younger generations, Samsung is actually a higher rating. It's a brand they know, it's a brand they trust, and tell that story in your messaging. Today, 36% of Americans are suffering from loneliness. How is your community and your home actually solving for that? And in what categories or what areas are you going to give them back their moments and make that home a special place to be? And even where they can do it. The locational factors in telling that story, we'll talk a little bit about that. Not just showing where all the competitors are in the community and that community itself, but where will they go have coffee? What does that look like? And telling that story. One of the biggest shifts that I've actually seen in home design is moving that room off the back of the house that sat in your backyard and moving it to the front of the house. People miss people, and I don't think that goes away. I think that stays. I can't tell you how many homes I've seen transform the front of their house to create more engagement at the front of their house. So making every space that's functional. And frankly, it opens up the light that everybody loves and really wants at the back of their house, and puts that space where they can engage with other people. And even for young families that have little kids, those little kids want to play with other little kids. And I see those young families engaging far more in their front yard than actually in their backyard. And we're seeing it actually in architecture in a lot of resale neighborhoods. I did some work in Phoenix, and they said, oh, that's the neighborhood where everybody lives to the front of the house and they all have these outdoor entertainment spaces. But again, we're looking at some very serious issues. And I think telling that story and how you can solve for it in today, in a turbulent time where you're afraid to make a decision, home prices have shifted over 50%. How do you offset that? 55% of adults are experiencing some sort of mental health issues today, since that pandemic started. And I think as we're coming out of that, we're now seeing rooms dedicated to meditation spaces. We're also seeing light becoming such a much more important space in the home, and just making sure that, it feels right. And that indoor-outdoor connectivity is just such a big deal, as we talked about earlier. And even just that connection to those water features that we talked about. Talking about digital experiences, all those things that we just talked about, the metaverse is really changing not only home entertainment, but how we actually sell homes. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about sort of looking at these virtual vehicles. But today, it's funny, my son just came home. He's going back to college to change his career. And he's setting up his room, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, well, I have to have enough space because of this toy, this game thing that he has. And he does everything on this. I mean, it's spectacular. And everybody comes over really, it's just wild to actually live in that space and kind of see what they can do today. And we're seeing so many immersive experiences, not just at home, but again, these are such cool ways to tell a story, engage them into that space. Here's a great example, a cruise line, that could be your window in the back there, which is basically staring at a wall, or that could be your window, which is, again, just an immersive experience. That's all digital. Same thing in this kitchen. Same thing in this outdoor space that actually connects to the outdoors. That's all digital. Or even more simple forms like connecting with that outdoor space in just a really cool, beautiful way with a lot of glass off the back, because again, if I move some of that space to the front, it's important. Even pet ownership, I think I'm the other one. This looks exactly like my 3 dogs. I used to have 1 dog. Now I have 3. Not certain I'm excited about it, but I have things like this in the house that drive me nuts when I really want stuff like this in the house. And again, telling that story and being able to show that you thought through some of that stuff. It's close to 70% of people now have pets at the house. And so working at home and solving for all of that, I'm waiting for one of my dogs to start barking any second as we speak. But again, it's telling how are you going to actually serve them? How are you going to actually solve for that entire family? From a digital perspective, we're going to start diving into some of the solutions and some of the things of great marketing, great digital strategies. And I'm going to start just first with this simple one for all of you dog owners that I think is just great marketing. So it's really just looking at something as simple as more pets at home, a quick little TikTok thing that you can throw online, however that is, but those little special moments that I showed this to our team as we were kind of going through the presentation. And one of my teammates was like, I want a dog. I mean, it sells like multiple things in this, but it strikes a chord of emotion. Again, during a time that's tough, but those are the things that are like, I'm going to go out and buy a Tesla. The same thing is true for home. If you can solve for those spaces, people will move for that. They will take less space if it's more functional. We can prove that with our research. The other big thing is we've seen some of the biggest, or definitely peak years for RV purchases. It's 600,000 annually. And now what do they do with all of those? We're seeing so many for those boomers that have the money, and even those young families that are doing more of the staycation or throwing them in to their RVs to travel on ground. But here's a great example for Toll Brothers in Texas. This is like in the mid sixes, 600,000, but this is a lot of house. It's definitely an affordable location. So it's that location that people are looking to get more space, but also solving for things like their RV. So how do you tell that story again, and in the way that we just did with that dog video? The clubhouse today, this is a spectacular clubhouse at Holly in Seattle, but I think the clubhouse too is actually changing. And again, telling that story, going from sort of the stodgy open air clubhouse and really going to today's hub, or club hub as I call it, for work, school, and so much more. We're seeing such a big transition. You can stock, grab, and go food so easily today. Grab a cup of coffee, have a glass of wine at the end of the day. But so much of this kind of stuff, again, that quick little snippet or video or telling the story of how it makes their life better, it's huge. Without a doubt today, right sizing space or right sizing the price, they need both, right? So yes, they do want this backyard, but this backyard's cool too. And so it's over, in some cases, it's close to 80%. In some cases, it's over 80% that said, hey, if you give me a great outdoor space for entertainment, it doesn't need to be big. So how do you save money and tell that story? This is cool, and people love this. Even with your kitchens, just pulling some of the cabinetry out. And yes, people definitely want storage. They want more function. So give it to them for sure. But bring the glass in, make it still cool, and save some money on those categories and move that storage to a more functional place anyways, as long as you can help organize them. Again, telling that story. Give them unexpected spaces. We did ask this too. The numbers for this are huge, but that's not just the pull down the stairs and try to like hurl your Christmas stuff up that staircase to stuff it into the attic. This is a drop. And there's a builder in Austin who does this. It's one of the #1 reasons their absorptions are almost twice that of their competitors. But again, it's just providing the sort of logical life solutions. And thank God my kitchen doesn't look like this. I would die if it did. But so many people are like stifled by the magic pot and the air fryer and the the microwave and all the stuff that they want to keep in their kitchen. And so giving them great solutions and telling them that story about how you're helping to make them more functional, more organized is so much better. Today's consumers, it's I think close to 80% that receive more than 2 packages. It's a pretty big number, But just, I can't believe builders haven't done this yet, but whether it's that walk-in closet that people can go in where you can drop your groceries, or you actually, in this particular case, this would work great as long as I had a place to drop those and potentially a door if they needed access to that. But again, it's all about how will you tell the story. And now we're going to talk about some of the digital categories that you can tell all of that. If you can solve for all of what I just showed you in these different ways that we have access to today, I think you'll increase sales. I think you're going to increase traffic. I think you're going to increase premiums. And that is what we're going to dive into as well. So how will you tell your story? The most important thing, I think, from an SEO perspective is it's time. So how fast, website speed, it's the user experience. And again, that user experience, we're going to go through some examples of that, but telling that story, not just on your product, but how it's going to solve their needs. I think those two together are so important. So it's those little videos of cuts that, what were you thinking of and how were you solving for that? Obviously how the links all connect together, your search intent. I would say don't overthink the search engine side of things. I know you'll constantly get recommendations from Google Analytics on things that you can change your keywords, but again, don't overthink it. Look at really what your return on investment is, which ones are actually driving the most, and stay with that strategy. And then the last part, of course, is security and privacy, because there's so many more things we're doing today in addition to taking customer information. Our number one goal, though, in all of this, and I always think of the movie Moneyball, and he said, what's the one goal that we're trying to solve for? Do you remember that? And the answer was, we got to get them on base, because if we don't get them on base, we can't get them home. And that's the whole intent you want to think of in everything you're doing from an SEO perspective. And yes, simple things like keywords, but there's more to it than that. And I think, again, solving for those emotional hot buttons and really being able to provide quick little snippets of that, I think, are huge. So again, your goal is to get an inquiry, then get an appointment, then get a sale, and of course, close that thing. So I'm going to use just some simple examples. Again, I like the reference of Tesla. It's fresh, it's different today. And I think it's simple, clean, and easy. So again, it's just a very simple image. As you go into your online store, I'm not going to beat website to death. We do tons of stories. I can tell you who the top builders are from a website perspective, what they're doing. But the real key things is location, community choice, visual and compelling home choices, being able to give them options online and being able to see that real time. So design choices, envision, all the stuff that VDX is doing there is phenomenal. Price transparency, don't dance, don't make them call, don't make them wait 2 days to get an answer on anything. It should be instant. Locational factors are huge. And then a contact resource that, I'm sorry, but today people get mad at me if I don't call back in 30 minutes. I don't know why it's any different for your sales centers. It's a big deal. So really just making that online experience clean and easy to enhance the user experience. I'm so thrilled that so much came up on this when I did research on this, but chatbots are dead, no pun intended. Texting with humans is really the way to do it. They want to talk to a human. Chatbots are just frustrating time wasters, and I think they're horrible for your brand. Because unless you have, billions of years of AI in it, it just can't respond right. And so this is a great article on the idea of bringing back the human customer service, but also at their convenience, and it's still very digital for sure. Virtual tours today are just not, they're required. It's not an option. So you've really got to think through all of the parts and pieces of this. This is a mix of Focus 360 and Alpha Vision, of course, Alpha Vision on our team, and Focus 360, who I'm a huge fan of as well. But it's telling that story right when you get to the community all the way through it, being able to walk around that home, being able to go in, that whole user experience inside the home, the amenity itself, being able to change that plan and see that, it's huge. I'm a huge fan of the CBH Homes team as well, but really looking at access on their terms. If I'm working, last night I worked ridiculous hours, and if I wanted to go meet my husband at a crazy time, you just have to let me do that. And so U-Tour has the best model out there. You can go in and visit at any time. You can instantly, as soon as Mollie Carmichael walks through the door, Jeff Shore can actually text me and say, hey, I saw you just walked in. If you have any questions, let me know. I've talked a lot about this, but this is without a doubt a great model. The only thing I'm going to tell you is there are some builders, some very big builders that are actually doing this. But I do think you need the human experience as quickly as you can to connect with that person. I've walked several model complexes where I do the QR code. I can't even get in. It's so frustrating. So I love this concept, but you have to make sure that somebody is monitoring this. And if anybody tries to get in and they can't, there should be a human on that door, like in a flash, and making sure that happens. So I'm going to call this a B2c Sales Concierge. You can call it whatever you want to, whether it's a sales associate, a salesperson, but I think we're really kind of moving more towards that concierge experience. But it's really getting them before the sale, during their visit, and after the visit, and making sure they have what they need, but they're getting it real time as quickly as they need it, just given the generation they're in. And then this is where we all wanted to do this 20 years ago, do centralized sales offices. We just didn't have the technology to support it. It works today, and it works really well. You just have to really be on it, almost like a security officer on all of your projects, to make sure you're really fulfilling the needs of all of your customers. It may not be fewer sales associates, but it's just a better and more productive way for their story and their life. So again, more ways of just sort of applying this. Tesla, easy, thoughtful choices. You'll see actually on some of the numbers, packages are definitely in, but even on your website and things like that, just being able to make it clean, simple, and easy. I went back and I looked at this, and you'll see the video that I'm also going to share with you today. I went back and looked at this, and 8 to 9 years ago, how did Tesla become such a big buzz item? And part of it was just providing something super compelling and something that was unique and different. Very little, big commercial marketing or anything like that. In fact, they don't really have a lot there at all. But again, it's simple, thoughtful, easy choices. Identify what that huge product difference is. The self-driving capability, how is it going to make their life better? They do a really good job of that $90,000 additional purchase. But when we look at packaging versus individual selections, over half really want the selected packages. I think it's 1 in 3 actually wants the individual choice. But again, it's making sure that they have price transparency. When you choose all of those selections very simply, you get to the end of the day of what that price is. And to do that, if today there's so many people doing buy downs, I hate to say this, but even 4.99 isn't a great rate today. So I'm not certain how compelling this is, but you do have to tell the whole story. It's still better than 6%, and it's still better than 6.9%. So it really does vary depending on what you're looking at. But again, at the end of the day, from a digital perspective, they need to be able to reserve and commit with confidence with very little risk. So this is where the handoff happens. So make this part so they actually give you $250, sign up. I think CBH does $100. And then from there, they're committed emotionally and mentally. You've got them. And then it's taking them through the whole process. So I'm going to take you through another video that actually is an interesting one that Tesla does, that I am surprised we don't have more of this either. And so this was an 8 to 9 year old video. And this kind of told the story as people were like, hey, there's no showroom. There's no place that I go, but they had tons of great stuff like this online. And I'm not going to do the whole video on this, but if you went through every one of your homes, there goes my dog. If you went through every one of your homes and told the story of every single thing you thought about, it's probably going to make me pay for that. It is.
Congratulations on purchasing your very own Tesla Model S. We at Tesla are very excited to get you on the road. Before we do that, we want to get you started on the right foot with just a couple of the car's most important functions. We'll kick things off with the Model S key. We'll do an overview of all the openings and tank space in the car. And then we'll move on to, of course, charging, show you how to get set up for that.
So just simply the key to your front door. How is that different?
And there are 3 buttons hidden along the top. And the first third, right around the windshield, is for the front trunk or front. And to open that, all you need to do is click twice. Next up is a button for the trunk. About 2/3 of the way back, and 2 clicks will either pop the trunk, or if you have the tech.
So you get the gist of it.
Stay away from the extreme levels of the battery. But if you're going to take a long trip the next day, it's a good idea to charge it to max range mode. Max range mode charges the car to 100%. That fills it all the way.
And I'm not going to drag you through 25 minutes of this.
You have a choice between FM, AM, or XM radio if you have a subscription. By pressing on FM, you get a more traditional tuner setup. You can slide in between stations and choose one specifically. You can search through just by clicking on here, backwards and forwards. And you can save a favorite just by.
So you can actually see just the gist of this, how this all works. But the reality is on this is just getting to a place where you're selling those wow features before they even get there. And it's a walk of the home. And it's more than like, here's the living room, here's the bathroom. It's the technology behind the walls. It's the technology that's going to make their life better in all the things we just identified. Because this is sort of the viral digital space that I think they made such a big difference with. And I think the most compelling thing they sell is not just the self-drive, not just the electric vehicle, but the fact, I can't tell you how many people have tried to sell me on a Tesla that own one. And they say, yeah, but the difference is I never have to buy a new car again, because they push new technology to my home, to my car, and I'll always have the latest and greatest technology. Do you know how many smart home technology features, you know, whether it's, I can name a bunch of them that do exactly that, but I've never heard a customer tell me that about their new home. I've never had a builder say, yeah, but the difference in our home is we push the latest and greatest technology to their home, so they never have to buy a new home again. That kind of stuff and that digital space, I think, is such a big deal. So now we're going to talk about some of the tools. We talked about how you'll tell your story, whether it's, you know, with digital, it's obviously on your website, it's you know, how you're going to interact with there. Now we're going to talk about some of those other tools that will actually help you to survive. These are just some simple stats when we look at sort of where do people start, and I broke it out by generation. So whether it's driving in the area or researching online or walking models, you can see why that digital space, I don't have to convince any of you on this, is so important. But it certainly continues to get more important for as we get to that younger generation, but it's just as important for silent Gen as it is for boomers, Gen X and Gen Y. There's no significant difference there. And then they're going to go out and drive the area and walk models and things like that. But getting that digital experience right, I think there's so many great opportunities to continue to do it. So many are doing it great, but I think it can even be better. You want to make sure that everything you're doing provides, and you saw this in the Tesla stuff, it's convenience, comparison pricing, comparison design, you know, being able to really see what that looks like. And that's all kind of comparing things online. And then storytelling, as you can see in what I just provided you, and really with tools that you can measure those digital pieces that you have out there. Online behavior, you know, obviously it's huge in so many other categories. You know, just buying apparel online, I mean, it's over half that are actually doing this today. And I suspect those numbers are continuing to grow quite a bit. When we actually look at buying a home entirely online, we're pretty far away from that. Now, this is the biggest purchase they're ever going to make, but I think it's some of those experiential things and really walking through the details of that and playing with those emotional chords, if you will. That's so huge today, but it is trending up. Sorry. Yeah. Take a drink of water. It is continuing to trend up, and we are seeing that 1 in 3 will actually go. Wow, 1 in 3 will actually go and buy after they walk the model and the home site completely. So it's 1 in 3. The other part too, you know, those that would only consider it in person, that younger generation, it is more than half that don't have to do everything in person. But that wealthiest buyer, that most affluent buyer. It is close to 70%. So again, the importance of B to H or H to H, that human connection, I think, is so important. Understand their life differences, selling solutions that's about them, not necessarily about you as the builder. And I really do believe with the broker community, when you look at this, I think they help to sell that premium that's planned into everything you've done. If you've done a great job of educating them, or you've got those digital vehicles on online. My voice is going. So top sources out there, it's real estate websites. Without a doubt, it's number one today. So Zillow and Realtor.com and those things, and certainly if you have Livable coming, you have to be on those sites first. Search engines with SEO, Google certainly is huge. Just making sure you have the right keywords is huge. Referral from family and friends, particularly for local, is huge. Email marketing is really a big deal, but I'm going to actually ask you to shift to really texting. And so the average stats today are 80% of emails don't get read, particularly if it's going to your personal email, but 80% of your texts do get read. And that's, of course, if it's going to your phone. Most people get far fewer texts. I do find advertising through text a little annoying, but I do read them and I do click on them. So I would say emails are certainly a great source. We'll ask a lot more about texting today. As you go down, you'll see things like social media, direct mail, certainly newspapers completely fallen off, and radio is pretty short as well. But I love this. So you're going to actually see, again, I showed this last year, but TikTok and Instagram are so popular with that younger generation, and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter are so popular with the older generation. And just doing a simple short video like this, I think is a really big deal. There's music with this, but for some reason it's not going off. But again, it's just a simple video that helps to tell the story. So top search engines, again, we talked about the Zillow, Realtor, Builder websites. These are the actual websites themselves. The other one was actually the top vehicle they were using. These are the websites themselves. So Zillow wins, followed by Realtor, and then of course your websites, and then Redfin, Trulia, and so forth as you go. So top media devices. Now this becomes really important just depending on how you're looking at advertising, but it also relates to one that I don't think gets used enough. So certainly for Silent Gen and the boomers, they're more so on their computer, but for the most part, the largest population from Gen Y, even all the way up to the boomers, are on their phones. And so using resources like geofencing, I think it's so crucial to your digital strategy. And all you have to do is geofence your competition. So when you're walking through their doors and everyone's staring at their phone 24/7 anyways, your community pops up to see something, throw a quick little video that they can see that will strike a chord with them and get them to come over. But again, it's more than just popping up on their phone. It's that quick little TikTok video or something that makes them say, God, I gotta go check that out. That's really cute. Top media choices too for the same group. We're looking at cable, direct TV, or online streaming. You can actually see, certainly for Silent Gen and boomers, it is cable. But for boomers, about half of them are online streaming. And with that, it's so inexpensive to actually do videos with some of these different networks. So be looking at that too, because where it used to cost, I remember Pulte did a Super Bowl commercial way back in the day. And I remember everybody was so shocked how much that one commercial cost. And today you can do those commercials so easily. You may not get Super Bowl timing, but it's fantastic. The other one, I hit this last year and I think it's so great, but being able to talk to location, I think is such a big piece of this. If you haven't seen Get Community, you have to check them out. What they do from just their tours, and their TikTok videos and all that stuff. I think they're doing some really cool stuff. But I think this could even be applied to not just the house itself. And by the way, you'd be shocked how inexpensive this is. But when you look at some of this stuff, I think you'll actually see what a huge tool it is. And again, these can be quick as they're popping up as you've geofenced them in some of those pieces. Last but not least, it's just give them meaning. So again, don't forget, think about all the things that they're faced with today. And I'm going to play one last piece if I can get this sound to work. And this is a Tesla video that they actually did that I think is fantastic. And it's sort of kind of connecting a lot of those dots. And let's see if we can get this to go. So, and here we go. Let's see if it'll go. If not, I'll put the link on there because basically what they do, let's see if they go.
We had no idea how Tesla would change our lives. I wear a lot of hats. I am a producer for commercials. I am a mom.
In the beginning, we just had one car and we would fight over who got to drive it.
So the rule was whoever was driving the furthest would get the Tesla. And now we've added a Model X to our family. We're a very busy family, so we have to travel a lot every day.
Paige drives a lot. We never know exactly where she's going.
I use my Model X like my office. I do a lot of conference calls. Autopilot lets me do that when it's bumper to bumper. I can put on autopilot and know that we're going to be safe.
Charging has never been a problem.
Todd likens it to charging your cell phone. When you get home at night, you plug in your cell phone. That's how we do it with our cars. I don't think that there's another car out there that gets better the longer you own it.
The performance is amazing. Technology is amazing.
That's a huge testament to what's important to me for my family.
That's why we like Teslas, because they keep up with us.
And I love that. I'm Paige, and my family is an electric family.
So you can totally see how Tesla really took all those hot buttons, but they showed how their car served something different that no other car offered, but for the average family. So whether it was the office out of the back, the easy drive, all the pieces that just kind of made life better. Whoever had the longest drive got the Tesla. And so again, it's just all those little things I think that can make a difference. And so good luck to everybody this year. I hope you do super great. If you guys need any help, we're here to help in any way that we can. Just a couple of last things for you guys. We have upcoming events. We've got MFE in Las Vegas. We have PropTech. That's going to be a virtual event. Don't miss that. That's on the 27th as well. And then we also have Future Place coming. And then we have all kinds of things coming after that. So check us out. If you go to zondahome.com, people always ask me, how can I find out about your events? Check us out there. And here's a quick QR code if you want to click on that. And that wraps us up for the day. Once again, I just can't thank you guys enough for joining us. If we can help in any way, just keep doing what you do, and we're here to help. With that, I will turn it back over to Amanda. Is there anything else you want me to touch on?
No, that's all. If you didn't see it, please know that there's a discount code for Architect Live. If you use the word Outlook, you'll get $100 off your registration fee. And that is all for today. Thank you so much, Molly, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.